What if Jimin had never broken away from the expected path, never stepped into that quiet rebellion of artistry that refuses to be boxed in by fame? Would Billboard and Vogue still be whispering his name like a secret suddenly rediscovered by the West? That's the strange question haunting fans right now, because the world's biggest pop culture gatekeepers just did something rare. They didn't just mention Jimin. They praised him. Publicly. Repeatedly. And with a kind of awe that feels deliberate. So why now? Why this sudden fascination from Hollywood's elite magazines, the same media universe that often treats K-pop like a passing novelty, not a cultural force? To answer that, we have to rewind time and then twist it a little. When Jimin released Face back in 2023, the world saw more than just a K-pop idol making his solo debut. They saw someone breaking sound barriers, not just in music charts, but in perception. Billboard didn't know what to do with him. Critics tried to decode his presence like he was an art installation rather than a singer. And yet, here we are, 2 years later, and those same outlets are writing about him as if he's suddenly the standard of global artistry. But what if none of this had happened? What if Face had been met with silence? No global #1, no tidal wave of fans translating every lyric, no storm of emotion sweeping across timelines. What if the world never paused to notice that Like Crazy wasn't just a song, but a psychological study wrapped in synths and sorrow? If that alternate timeline existed, Vogue wouldn't be praising his creative risk-taking. Billboard wouldn't be calling him the bridge between pop and performance art. And Hollywood wouldn't be nervously asking itself whether it had missed something massive right under its nose. See, here's the paradox. Jimin didn't change overnight. The world's lens did. In the entertainment industry, timing is everything. And the West, especially Hollywood, has always been slow to recognize Eastern artistry until it becomes undeniable. It took decades for Japanese cinema to be seen as art. It took years for Korean film to win Oscars. And now, it seems, it's taking Jimin's quiet genius for the music world to finally understand that K-pop idol doesn't mean manufactured product. Still, why the sudden praise? Why now? Because something is shifting in pop culture's tectonic plates. Western media, the same Billboard that once built pop's borders, is realizing that borders don't exist anymore. Music crosses them effortlessly. And Jimin, intentionally or not, became one of the architects of that new world. But let's flip the question. What if he had chosen differently? Imagine Jimin deciding not to go solo. Imagine him fading into the background while others took the spotlight. Imagine no Set Me Free PT2, no delicate chaos of Like Crazy, no mirror shattering in front of us, both literally in his visuals and symbolically in how he tore apart the image of the perfect idol. If that version of history had happened, Western media might have stayed asleep a little longer. The system would have remained intact, a world where pop is predictable, safe, and ruled by algorithms instead of artistry. But Jimin didn't play by that script. He broke it. And now Vogue calls him a study in duality. Billboard writes that his performances blur the line between vulnerability and power. They use words they rarely reserve for pop stars, words like transcendent, haunting, necessary. Maybe the real story isn't about Jimin being praised. Maybe it's about the West finally realizing it's no longer the center of culture. Every headline that mentions him is a symptom of something larger, a quiet panic masked as admiration. Hollywood, the cultural empire that built the myth of global fame, is realizing that influence has moved eastward, and that the boy from Busan, the one who once danced barefoot under blue lights, now holds more emotional gravity than most of their industry combined. But here's the fascinating twist. Jimin never chased that validation. If anything, he ran from it. His interviews remain soft-spoken. His expressions are half smiles that hide full worlds. He talks more about honesty than fame, more about connection than domination. And maybe that's what confuses the machine, because he's not trying to win in the Western sense. He's trying to be. And yet, the more he simply exists, the more the world bends toward him. That's the power of authenticity in an era addicted to spectacle. Jimin's art feels like it bleeds, not perfectly choreographed emotion, but real, Trembling humanity. Billboard didn't suddenly fall in love with K-pop. It fell in love with the idea that someone from that system could rise above it, carrying both its beauty and its wounds. Let's stretch the counterfactual further. What if Jimin had been born in Los Angeles instead of Busan? Would he still be called a K-pop idol? Would Western critics still frame his art as unexpected depth instead of simply depth? Would Vogue still call him refreshingly complex? Or would they just call him a genius performer? That's the irony. Jimin's artistry didn't change based on geography, but the way it's perceived did. Hollywood is in a strange position now, admiring something it can't quite categorize. They see in Jimin what they've tried to manufacture for years: sincerity that can't be replicated, magnetism that doesn't shout, elegance that doesn't need validation. In a counterfactual world, where he never went solo or never dared to be different, we'd lose more than just a few good songs. We'd lose a cultural mirror, one that reflects how art moves when ego doesn't lead it. Because what Jimin represents isn't just a single artist being praised by glossy magazines. He represents the quiet dethroning of an old order, a world where global recognition was once dictated by geography, not emotion. Maybe Billboard and Vogue aren't just praising him. Maybe they're apologizing for missing it,
for underestimating it,
for realizing too late that the boy they once labeled a pop idol was actually redefining what pop could mean. Imagine if the Western world had acknowledged Jimin earlier. Would the cultural shift we see now have come sooner? Would collaboration feel less like representation and more like normality? Counterfactuals have a strange way of revealing truth. By imagining what didn't happen, we understand more deeply what did. And what happened here is simple, but seismic. Jimin became unavoidable. He didn't need controversy, marketing gimmicks, or a reinvention arc. He just kept creating art that felt human. And in a world drowning in content, humanity is the rarest currency. That's why Billboard and Vogue suddenly sound so poetic when they talk about him. Because they're not just describing an artist, they're describing a shift in cultural gravity. If Jimin didn't exist, someone would have to invent him. Not as a singer, but as a symbol, proof that vulnerability can still cut through the noise. And maybe that's what the world smells behind all this sudden praise. It's not a conspiracy, not a PR campaign. It's recognition wrapped in regret. The world is catching up to something that's been obvious to ARMY for years. The truth is, Jimin didn't suddenly become worthy of the spotlight. The spotlight finally learned how to see him. And if we keep asking why now, maybe the better question is, what took them so long? And maybe that's where this story quietly ends, not with applause, but with understanding. Because this isn't just about Jimin being praised by Western media. It's about how truth always finds its way through noise, even when the world takes years to listen. His art didn't demand attention. It earned resonance. His name didn't echo because of hype. It stayed because of honesty. The West can write as many glowing headlines as it wants, but the real story was written long ago, in the eyes of fans who saw him clearly before anyone else did. Jimin didn't wait for the world to catch up. He just kept moving one note, one performance, one heartbeat at a time. And now that the world finally understands what he's always been, an artist, not an idol, maybe the only thing left to say is, he didn't change for them. They changed because of him. May the truth always rise, no matter how long it takes the world to see it.